Welcome back to our continuing coverage of UFC 205. I'm Ariel Helwani, standing alongside our own Marc Raimondi and Chuck Mindenhall once again. This time we're standing outside the Madison Square Garden Theater on the corner of 31st and 8th Avenue here in New York City. The UFC 205 pre-fight press conference just wrapped up. Another memorable Conor McGregor press conference. And Chuck, let me start with you. We were standing here around 6 or so weeks ago once again after that first 205 press conference, and that was a memorable one. Now for the encore. What did you make of it?
Well, it's kind of in one way, it's predictable at this point. You think he's going to show up late. Speaking Conor McGregor, you think he's going to be late. He was. There's an acceptance in the building this time about it, which was odd, and then he gets in there and the place comes to life. So I felt like it was, it's kind of like you don't want to really hope that it's going to take that form, but in some ways that's what it did. It got exciting very fast, and of course there was the whole melee thing that kind of almost happened, a little mini melee.
We'll get to that in a second, but Mark, I'm wondering if at this point you feel like Conor feels like he has to outdo himself every time there is a press conference. Do you sense that pressure that he's feeling?
I think there's a little bit of that, and I don't know if I wouldn't say it's maybe a pressure, just maybe his own nature to feel like he has to continue to top himself, and which is very hard to do in a sense because of some of the antics of the past. There were no energy drink bottles thrown, but there was almost a chair thrown today. There was the white mink, the Gucci mink with the red shirt, which is either a tribute to Joe Frazier or Frank Lucas, the legendary Harlem drug kingpin. I'm not sure which homage that really was, but it was just Conor being Conor. All of it was obviously turned up to 11, and I don't know if he's trying to top himself or he's just being himself.
Let's start at the top. So Dana White starts off the press conference and Conor McGregor isn't there, and Eddie Alvarez is hearing the boos, but I thought he seemed a lot more calm, a lot more cool, a lot more collected, just a lot more comfortable in the environment, even when he was being booed on the East Coast. And then finally he says, "Let me know when he comes, I'm out of here." He didn't stay as long as Nate Diaz did. What did you think of the decision to A, start without him once again, and B, Eddie leaving just like Nate did not that long ago?
Well, the first thing, I mean, him being late is, I guess at this point we make jokes about it. I feel like Dana has just kind of just said, you know what, this is what's going to happen. It almost just feeds into the state of anticipation with these things because they get rolling. There's a couple questions to the other people, and then they start, hey, what do you talk to Dana about being tardy, and all these questions about his being late and punctuality and everything. And then he shows up, and it's like this grand entrance. I don't know when that'll get old. It's a little old already that you're like, well, we've seen this shtick before, but at the same time, he really does bring the room to life. It is very weird. It's like the anticipation is finally met with something, and he's that kind of star. As for Eddie kind of getting up and walking away, that seemed really weird to me just since we just went through this. And in fact, not just that, not just walking away, but coming back, the whole belt snatching thing, and then it almost seemed like it could escalate into something where there would be fines attached again, like something, and you're like, this can't really be happening again, can it? So that part where him walking out was a little strange. It was like that just because we just seen that with Nate.
I feel like the next time something like this is planned, the opponent is just not going to walk out. That's the point that we've reached. The opponent's just going to say, I'm going to come out when he comes out. Do you agree, though, that Eddie seemed a lot more comfortable in this setting than he did around 6 or so weeks ago?
He did. I thought he looked fine. I thought he handled himself well. I wasn't a huge fan of the joke about Conor's girlfriend being pregnant, and I'm not really sure what that was all about. I know it was in response to Conor saying during the conference call that Eddie's wife and kids wouldn't recognize him. I'm not a big fan of any of that stuff, to be honest with you.
Is it fair play because Conor mentioned his kids first, or should he not stoop to that level, in your opinion?
I mean, I don't know if fair play really even comes into fair play. Is just all. I mean, there was almost a chair thrown. I mean,
Sure.
we've seen much worse, but that just kind of stuff, whatever. I think to answer your question, I thought Alvarez seemed fine. I thought that it didn't look like the moment was getting to him at all. McGregor had said on the herd earlier in the day that he felt like Alvarez was panicking. I didn't see really any of that today.
No, I actually was very impressed with Eddie Alvarez. I mean, just studying the way he handled the questions and the scene 6 weeks ago, seemed like a much more comfortable guy. It seemed like he was prepared for all of this. Even I thought his responses were a lot better, and he was trying to throw the first punches, so to speak, as well. So he walks out, then they come back, and then they have this little thing, and then they get broken up, and then it kind of goes like a beat too long where you're not really sure what's going to happen. And of course, that results in the people saying this is staged, this is fixed, this is choreographed, all that stuff. Did it seem like any of that to you?
I must be naive because I heard somebody ask that question. It hadn't really occurred to me until he said that.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I thought about it in retrospect. Well, I suppose that could have been staged. You know what I mean? But if they did, I couldn't tell as I was watching it. I don't know how you guys felt. I thought it was an organic sort of situation going on there. Let's face it. This is this thing. We saw this with Jose Aldo. This also plays into that whole thing with the belt snatching and all that stuff. I just feel like that's a real sign of disrespect, And Conor loves to do it, and it pisses people off. You can see how that would make Eddie Alvarez ready to throw down, and I thought his responses were great because he was like, hey, I'll fight him. I came here to fight him one way or another. Whether that's right now or we wait until Saturday night, I'm here to fight him. So in my mind, it just helps fuel it. We were talking a little bit earlier today about how Eddie might not have the same reach that Nate did, but I feel like he's doing a pretty good job of generating that for himself as we get closer to the fight.
Marc, up until and right after UFC 194, Conor was always like the three-piece suit guy. He was outlandish, but he never really took it a step far. Then he comes back in January and wears the El Chapo get-up that a lot of people were somewhat offended by. He comes out to the song when he fights Nate the first time at 196. He loses, and then it seemed like for 202 he kind of dialed it down a little bit. He went back to the old Conor. Now he comes out with this. Are you worried that, again, he's getting a little too big for his britches here?
He seems to have a very strange obsession with drug kingpins, whether it be El Chapo, Pablo Escobar, and now possibly Frank Lucas. I don't really know what to make of all of that. I think it's kind of a I run this game, I run this whole type of thing. I'm a gangster. That whole type of deal. I mean, that's what it comes off as to me. I don't know if that goes into his mindset and it goes into how he's thinking about the fight and that kind of thing. I don't know if that's reading too much into it. I will say this about the whole is this fixed type thing. I saw some of that on Twitter as well, and it's not fixed. It's just Conor trying to, I think, rile people up and seeing how far he can push Dana or Eddie Alvarez, and seeing how far he can push it, seeing how far over the line he can go just to get a reaction out of people. That's what he does. That's all it is. It isn't this is fixed. Is it completely organic where he's that angry and he's going to throw a chair? No. He's just effing with people, and that's just what he does, and that's why he comes out and he does what he does. It's really just for a reaction.
And the crowd certainly seems to fuel him.
Yeah, and it is fun. Like this at this point, it is fun. When you see Conor saying, like, this whole thing sinks without me, and Dana's standing right there. At this point, it's become a game within the game to watch Dana's face kind of changing and, like, the sort of thoughts going through his head. Because we know how long the UFC has lobbied to get in here. We've seen them for years and years. We've host press conferences here to get into New York City. So it's a well-laid track that they've had to get here. And then Conor comes in, he's like, hey, this whole thing is just this is about me and all this. At this point, I love that tension. I love the tension between him and the UFC, this kind of the game within the game.
I hate to play cynical curmudgeon journalist here, but, I mean, at the end of the day, this is dubbed a press conference.
Yeah.
I could hardly hear any of his responses. We're being surrounded, it was almost like we were in the middle of a mosh pit. We're being surrounded by fans, yelling, screaming, swearing. There is a part of me that feels like, what exactly am I doing here? Like, do we even need to be here? Do they need us to ask these questions? Can't someone else just feed? You know what I mean? Like, there is a part of me that says, like, are we doing a press conference or are we doing a show? Yeah. And I don't know if it's maybe the mood of the week and, some other things on our minds. But I feel like I walk away from this with with not the same kind of enthusiasm that I did from previous press conferences, even the one 6 or so weeks ago. Do you understand what I'm sort of saying here?
I think part of that feeling is probably because there's a lot more serious things going on in this country, in this world, and that's probably partially why you're feeling that way, because you seem to be all about the theatrics at other times.
I love it.
Yeah.
This week, I don't know.
Yeah. But to your point, we're absolutely just props out there. We're really, as reporters, we're really just part of the show. We're not, it's really more for the whole thing rather than us. It's supposed to be us trying to cull information and cull quotes for stories and for videos and all that stuff, and it really is just part of the show. My main concern, and I've actually echoed this to the UFC, is that I feel like, we don't get enough access to the Woodleys and the Wonder Boys and the Carolinas and the Joannas because this press conference is just theatrics. If it's Conor McGregor up there, it's going to be all about McGregor. It's all about his opponent, and we're not going to get the kind of insightful stuff that we really should be able to get from the people who are also fighting in title fights. And I think that's a concern. I think that's something they need to change if they're going to be doing it. I don't mind them being up there, but at least give us something else so that they're not just they're not just props. They're not just it's not just Hiram Woodley holding up his cell phone taking video of a possible fight. I mean, I think there should be more of those guys.
I couldn't agree more. And Chuck, when you speak about those other 4 fighters, I mean, there isn't a whole lot much to say about them. Clearly, New York is Wonder Boy country. They continue to boo Tyron, although not as vociferously, I thought, as they did the first time. And Joanna and Carolina didn't say all that much. Anything from those 4 that really stood out to you?
I feel like with the 2 straw weights, it really doesn't. You don't care what they say to each other, right? But when they square off and they're forehead to forehead and they're pushing off, you just get the sense that fight is going to be crazy.
Are you surprised, by the way, that the champion Joanna is the one initiating that kind of aggressive push? Usually you see it maybe, you know what I mean, from the challenger.
It's kind of funny because Ronda Rousey, when she lost her belt, wasn't she the aggressor on
That's
the?
true.
So sometimes you look at a psychological thing like that, and you wonder like how much pressure is catching up to him. She seems like she's handling it really well. I just think she's an aggressive fighter, and I think that's how she is. So I didn't read too much into it, but I tell you what, it got me a little more excited for that fight. You do tend to fall asleep a little bit on these other fights. I remember the whole Rory McDonald, Robbie Lawler fight. We just slept on it the whole way as we were going through the McGregor Aldo stuff, and then they put on the fight of the year. So sometimes if these guys don't have to think about the media obligations, it's all done for them. Who knows, man? You might get another gym like that. And you got some potential, too, with Joanna's fight and with Stephen Wonderboy against Woodley. So I kind of feel like none of those guys truly want to carry that load, so they're all probably pretty happy to just kind of play in the shadows there.
Marc, let us end on this. Journalists be damned. They really put these things on to sell pay-per-views at the end of the day.
100%.
Did that accomplish the goal? Is this show now going to sell more pay-per-views because of what transpired here this afternoon?
Yeah, we're talking about just sheerly selling pay-per-views. There's no doubt. I logged onto Facebook as soon as I was done the press conference, and the first thing I saw was just people sharing all the videos of McGregor's entrance with the mink coat and the possible chair throwing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, absolutely, that kind of stuff goes viral. We're in a social media world, and it 100% helps sell. I don't know how many it's going to do. I can't put a figure on it, but there's no doubt.
All right. That does it for us here from New York City. It is around, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and actually it's a little earlier than that. I think it's around 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, to be exact. In around 15 or so hours from right now, the official weigh-ins will take place from just a block up from where we're standing, and then later on, Friday afternoon, the ceremonial weigh-ins will take place. Guess what? MMAfighting.com will be at both events. For those, we'll actually be doing our old play-by-play.
I was going to ask if you're going to do the golf.
Oh, you bet your bottom dollar we will. We will be there live from the official weigh-ins on Friday morning. But for now, we will say goodnight from the Joe Louis Plaza here in New York City. For Marc, for Chuck, I am Ariel. Again, thank you for watching our coverage on day 2 of UFC 205 Fight Week. We'll see you on Friday.